Howdy folks, Rudrose here, and today we will be discussing bans and why I think they would be a positive and healthy thing for the Lorcana game to develop. Howdy folks, future Rudrose here. Sorry for the interruption, but I completely wrote out and recorded this video before the surprise bans that came out on the 8th of April for Flaversham and the Fortisphere. However, I didn't want to throw away all this work I had already done, and I still think most of the points in this video applies, but just know that for context. I didn't know those bans had just happened. I'll probably talk about those in a future video, so enjoy. I have been playing TCGs for many decades now, so I am well versed in games that ban cards, and why they ban them, how they ban them, and I know bans are a contentious topic, especially among the Disney Lorcana community, because we've never had one before. Only thing we've really had is the Bucky errata. So first, I wanted to refute a couple of the common critiques that I hear against bans, and then I'm going to go into some of the reasons why I think they would be good. I hope you enjoy this. So, first of all, I wanted to touch on some of the common critiques that I often hear throughout the community. This won't be all of them, just ones that I hear pretty loudly. So one critique I always hear is, it's too early. And I just have one question for anyone who says that. Okay, so when is it not too early? And I don't mean that to be mean or facetious. I just mean it genuinely. Okay, when is not too early? How much time do you need to say, okay, yes, something is very strong? Because for experienced players, we know when we read a card, oh wow, that card sounds really strong. And then within 2 games of playing it, I'm either confirmed, yes, it's insanely strong, or, well, actually, it's not quite as strong as I thought now that I've tested it out a bit. So we don't need that much time. You know, a card like Bell, when everyone saw Bell, we knew how strong that card was going to be. A turn 1 3/3 is insane, and it proved to be insane, and you can see from all the meta reports how dominant Sapphire has been. So if you think it's too early, I genuinely want to know, how much time do you need or do you want to see before you say, okay, now I get it? Like, how many tournaments do you need to see of Sapphire dominating? How many? Another point I often hear about is that rotation is better, and I have many thoughts on this. So here's the thing with rotation. I am not against rotation outright. However, you have to have a very big player base to have a rotation, because it means you now have to support multiple formats. The reason it works in Magic the Gathering is because that player base is so huge, and there's so many formats in that game. You know, what do they call them? Legacy, Modern, Pioneer, Standard. So you can rotate cards out that, well, they're still playable in those older formats, but then not the new ones. Lorcana is still very, very new, and the community is not nearly as big as Magic the Gathering. Nothing is. Here's another thing, too. You have to design around rotation. You can't just arbitrarily say, okay, Lorcana sets 1 through 3, they don't exist anymore, and now you have to only play with sets 4 through 7, 4 through 5. Imagine if you did that right now in Lorcana. The game isn't designed around that. You would lose Be Prepared. Imagine a Lorcana meta where Be Prepared doesn't exist, where there is no incentive to hold back on how many bodies you flood the board. Character decks would be insanely out of control because they'd have no risk of, I'll just go as wide as possible. Be Prepared, as frustrating as I'm sure it is for some of those players, is a necessary tool to keep every player ever from just jamming out every single body they possibly can. Especially in a game where you can't challenge readied characters, that you have to have these spot removal effects to deal with readied characters. Another point on rotation is that rotation is still a ban. If we were to cut off the first 3 sets of Lorcana, that's way more cards to ban than if you were to just ban 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 problem cards. That's what, 204 cards a set? So what, 612 cards you're getting rid of? And it essentially is a ban, unless you have some other format you can go play in, but then that format is going to split the player base. Instead of everyone coming to a Tuesday night locals to play Standard, now, okay, well, instead of the 10 people we had for Standard, 5 of them want to play old format, and only 5 want to play the new format, and so now the groups get smaller and smaller and smaller. And something to consider, too, Magic the Gathering, which is the most successful card game and has the most longevity, and we should look to that for the things it does well. We can change things. We don't have to copy Magic, but we can look to it for the things it does well. Even with rotations existing, Magic the Gathering still bans cards. Magic has never used the reason that, well, in 2 years it'll get rotated out, so just deal with it. Play with a miserable game in a miserable format for 2 years, because eventually it'll go away. They don't do that. Another point I often hear is that we just need more powerful cards. We need cards that answer the problem cards. I really don't like this design philosophy, because when you do that, you're not just getting rid of the problem cards, you're getting rid of essentially any card that has stats similar to that card. Let's take the Bell Inventor from this set, right? It is a turn 1 3/3, which to this day we have yet to see anything like that. There is nothing with that high of stats that you can put out for turn 1 and you put it out for free. So what kind of card do you make to get rid of that? Again, it costs 1 or essentially costs nothing. It's free, right? So do you make a free steel song that can be sung and only costs and does 4 damage? Or do you make a ruby card that says choose a card with 3 strength on turn 1, banish it? Yeah, you'd answer Bell that way, but you know what else you'd answer? Every single card in the game that has 3 strength or less, which is pretty much every 1-drop. So instead of just getting rid of the problem card, which is what you should do, if Bell is the problem card, just get rid of Bell. If you create this stronger card that answers the Bell, you're hurting everything. You're not just hurting the Bell, you're hurting so many cards in the game. Think of the Tamatoa Sapphire, Happy as a Clam. That card is insanely powerful. I really want you to think about this. Imagine that card disappears next set because something comes out that's so powerful it makes Tamatoa not worth playing. That's a scary thought. And a little behind the scenes info as well, these sets are designed far in advance of what we're currently playing. So right now while we're in Arcasia's Island, probably they have 3 sets worth of cards already finished and designed for the game. So even if they realize, oh, Bell's a problem right now, let's make an answer to it, that card isn't even going to come out until set 11, maybe 12. So you're still going to have to put up with this card for sets and sets and sets. That's over a year of time. So that's a very long, drawn out answer that hurts so much more in the game than just removing the problem card. Next, I hear the argument, well, there's no DLCs, so who cares? Or there's no official Ravensburger tournaments, so what does it matter? And I very much care about this point because your weekly locals, your internal testing, that still matters. You should still enjoy that. We don't even know when the next DLCs are going to be. What if they're not until 2026? And you hate this meta right now and you find it miserable. Should you have to suffer through that? Well, I've got to suffer through a year of playing just until the official tournament comes out. And to be honest, I find this point a little insulting too because it implies that only the highest competitive stuff matters, right? Yeah, so okay, well, the only thing we care about is the top 64 decks from a DLC. Even the DLCs, which are huge, what, 2,000 people go to those? How many people in the world play the Lorcana trading card game? A lot more than 2,000. So none of them matter. If all those people are having a miserable time, or the majority of them are having a miserable time at their weekly locals, that doesn't matter. Only at the very top official tournament matters? No, not at all. Your game, people have to play your game week in and week out, and people won't want to play it if it's not enjoyable to play with. No one's going to say, well, I'm having a terrible time, but I'll just stick around until the DLC because then maybe something will change. So all levels of play matter. You should be able to enjoy and have fun at all levels of play. Now, the point that I paid for all these cards or taking the money hit, this is the one I am the most sympathetic for because I get it. It sucks to buy a bunch of new cards and then suddenly they get banned and it feels like you wasted all that money. And there's no way around that. There's no way to sugarcoat that, yeah, that feels bad and it's always going to feel bad. It is a trading card game, though, and this exists in all trading card games. Unfortunately, it's just part of the inherent risk you take when you invest in a trading card game. One way or another, those cards are going to get hit eventually. Let's take Tragic Beast, for example. There is going to come a day where a card comes out that makes Tragic Beast not even worth looking at. You know, he's still not even played as frequently now as he was, but he's at least kind of worth considering in a lot of lists, right? There will come a day he will get power crept, or if you add rotation that you cannot play Tragic Beast anymore, which means at some point that card's only going to be worth whatever money is it determined to be because it's not playable anymore. And that's unfortunate, but that's just kind of the nature of a card game. And if someone has a solution around that, and maybe that's where a rotation could come in the other formats. Again, I don't think Lorcana is quite ready for that yet. And I get it. It sucks. It really does. On the bright side, though, if a card gets banned, I mentioned him earlier, okay, let's say Tragic Beast gets banned, or let's say Diablo gets banned, whatever your choice is, that means other cards now become more playable because a lot of these cards are gatekeepers. They keep other cards out of the meta. They keep cards that, well, maybe you wouldn't normally use that, but if I don't have to worry about Diablo, or I don't have to worry about Tamatoa, or I don't have to worry about Big Sisu, maybe now there's a card that, hey, I can actually try playing this more. So yes, while you will lose some money on certain cards, it does also increase the value of other cards. All right, so those are some of the common critiques I've heard. Now I want to move on to what I think are some of the positives of having a ban list in a game like Disney Lorcana. So let's start with, it is a way to change the format without power creep. I have said this many, many times, and I will say it until I'm blue in the face, and then hopefully I'll keep saying it after that. There are only 2 reasons a card goes away. 1, it gets removed from the format, whether it gets banned, rotated out, whatever, something causes it that you are not allowed to put it in your deck, or 2, it gets power crept. Those are the only reasons cards go away. This Bell Inventor card, this card will not disappear until something better comes out to do, which, please, I don't want to see that, or it gets banned or removed. A card like Flaversham is the best draw engine that Blue has. People are not going to stop using that card until something better than Flaversham comes out. Ugh, sounds awful, right? Or it gets banned or removed. And if you're not willing to ban things, then the only other way you have to change the format to get people to stop playing those consistent power cards is to release something even stronger. Do we want a Sisu that's an 8-cost Sisu that now hits characters of 3 strength or less? I certainly don't want to see that. I don't want to see a Merlin Goat that actually gets 2 lore on entry and exit. But if you don't, again, harness those other cards, that's the only way to change the format. So bans are great because they let you change the format without having to power creep all the cards. Another positive is that it actually frees the design team to take more risks. If you are in an Eternal format and you know that once you put a card out there, nothing can ever be done about that, that actually really hampers design. And maybe it's part of the reason we've seen so much safe design in Lorcana. Look at all the cards we have that are completely blank, have no text, or are uninkable when they wouldn't even be good if they were inkable, that you can tell they're just super, super reserved and conservative. Not all the cards. Again, we have Tamatoa happy as a clam for some reason. But there are these cards that they're very safe because they're probably afraid, oh man, if we pushed it too much and it was busted, then what do you do? Well, if you can't ban, yeah, that's a problem. But if you can try crazy stuff. You can try really wacky out there ideas. You can make, look, we see these dogs on the wallpaper here. You can make a Dalmatian Exodia deck where if you have so many Dalmatians, you just win the game. And then if it's too strong, you can ban it or restrict it or pull it back, and that frees them up to do that. Whereas if they have to go up, everything has to be perfect right out the gate. I mean, that's just an impossible task. That's setting yourself up for failure. Another one of my favorite parts of a ban list is that bans cause excitement. Some of the best attended locals I've seen for many card games is after a card has been banned, where the locals are dwindling, no one wants to play because no one's having a good time, and then a card gets banned and suddenly, hey, there's 10, 12, 15 people back here when once there was 4 or 6. So they really do improve the gameplay, and healthy formats do keep people playing and keep people returning. You know, this is supposed to be fun. This is an activity we all do ultimately for fun. And playing against broken cards is not fun, especially if you have to do it week in and week out. A good friend of mine from Rules of Villainy podcast had an experience recently where he faced 3 bells on like turn 2 or 3, you know, just and cards they didn't even have to pay for, and he just quit. He was just like, I don't want to play against this, and just picked up his cards and left. Why wouldn't you? He was sick of seeing this same outcome and this same cycle and this same pattern. It's just, I don't even want to play it. This isn't even enjoyable. I don't like the feeling of like, wow, it's turn 3 and I already feel like I've lost because there's 3 bells and there's a Scrooge and I don't have a deck that can just deal with all these cards. And on that point, Lorcana in particular is very bad about balancing their ink colors. How does Amber or Amethyst or Ruby deal with a Lucky Dime? Those colors have no way to get a Lucky Dime off the field. So when I'm playing against a Sapphire Steel deck and their Oswald hits the Lucky Dime on turn 3, I know playing Ruby Amethyst, I can't do anything about that. That item is going to sit there the entire game. You know, a game like Magic, it doesn't matter what color you're in. There's always something you can do. Even if it's not a great card, there are cards that can answer it. But in Lorcana, so many of these colors have characters or items or locations or whatever that's like, they can't answer these cards. And so they're just stuck. That feels awful. Hey folks, Future Rudrose popping in again for one quick moment to kind of confirm this, that the Discords were just lit up with chatter and talk and excitement and a lot of disappointment too, but it got people talking. So it just confirms what I said, that yes, bans can create excitement. Now, Bucky will lead us into our next example, which is that I think bans are better than erratas. I really don't think erratas should be used in paper card games unless there is a text error that, oh, it was supposed to say chosen character, but instead it says chosen character of yours. Okay, it's not working the way it's intended because you should be able to choose anyone, and the way it's printed, you can only choose yours. In digital games, it's a little easier because anyone who picks up that digital game, they're going to see it. But imagine if you've got 10, 15, 20 cards that have been errated. It is a lot harder for someone to grasp their mind around that versus a list you can just point to and say, hey, these cards aren't allowed. Especially because I think most people who at least are getting into TCGs or know of TCGs have heard of bans and have heard of cards getting banned. It's way easier to go, yeah, here's the 5 cards that aren't allowed versus, well, oh, sorry, you're playing the wrong version of that. Oh, and that's the wrong version of that, and that's the wrong version of that. That text was changed. Like, so erratas are just messy, especially in physical card games. And if an errata is going to be like Bucky's errata anyway, as I said when that happened to that card, I mean, they might as well have banned it. They hit it and nerfed it and errated it so harshly that the card may as well have been banned because nobody was going to play such an awful card after that. And referencing some of our other card games, all healthy card games use them. Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, even Final Fantasy, what I came from, and they were very reluctant to ban. They all still ban cards because it's just part of the process. It is unrealistic to expect a team of 5 or 10 or 20 designers to be able to effectively test a card against all the other cards in the pool versus the thousands and thousands of players you have playing your game. Of course, the player base, we kind of are the testers. Unofficially, we really are. We are going to be able to test them and jam these games so much more frequently than any design team could. And that's what a ban list is for. Imagine you have a garden, and what do we do to keep a healthy garden? You prune away the weeds. You prune away dead leaves. Imagine if you could only ever add to a garden. You could never take out the things that were hurting it, that were restricting it from growing. Uh-oh, those weeds are choking the tomatoes. Well, I'll just dump more tomatoes on top of it and just hope they outgrow it. Like, no, it's okay to add and to subtract. Both are really good tools to use that make a fun, healthy card game. There's a card game called Elestrals. I think it's only like 5 sets in, and not only did they already ban cards, they're actually going to re-release fixed versions of those in future sets. So here's a card. It was too strong at whatever this stat line, so now we're going to re-release it at a future stat line, which is something you can do as well. Another great point about bans do not have to be permanent. They really don't. Just because a card like Bucky, we'll say, I know he wasn't banned, but just, for argument's sake, Bucky goes on the ban list now, maybe in set 10, he's not a problem anymore. And then you can bring him back off of it. Maybe Diablo's an issue through sets 4 through 7, but then in set 8 or 9, he's actually okay. You can bring it off the list. That was actually something the Final Fantasy TCG did that I didn't like, was that when something went on the ban list, that was it. They would never, ever touch it again. I don't think you have to do that. If you feel a card is, okay, it was too strong for its time, but nowadays stuff has crept up in power so much, we can bring it off the list. That's fine. Something you can also do that I am in favor of is you can limit cards, especially in a game like Lorcana where searching we don't really have searching. Like in some other games, searching is just everywhere. So limiting is like, because you can always just search out your copy of it. But you can. So what if instead of 4 copies of Tamatoa Happy as a Clam, what if you're only allowed to run 2 copies of it? What if you're only allowed to run 2 copies of Maui Half Shark? It can be there. It can be part of your strategy. But if I get rid of both copies, it's done, and you don't have as many ways to keep using it. So I'm personally in favor of limiting cards. I think that's actually a nice little middle ground where you still get to keep the card and you still get to use the card and it has all the value it has, but it's not so overwhelming to play against because it's less reliable. The only real argument against that is sometimes it can lead to this feels bad of, oh, well, they're only allowed 1 copy of Big Sisu, for example, and then they find the Big Sisu and you're going to, are you kidding me? You've got 1 copy in that deck and you found it. Oh, that's so frustrating. But overall, I do like the idea of limiting cards as well. Another great positive of bans is that it gives lesser cards and decks a chance. I don't know if you've ever heard of the term shadow ban, but it essentially means something that's not technically banned, but effectively banned because it's so bad. So there are so many cards in this game. There's 204 cards a set. So we've got over 1,000 cards in this game. How many? And so many don't even see play, right? Because they're just weak. They're too weak to even be remotely competitive. And of course, sure, maybe you play them at your locals for fun. I'm talking about strictly competitive. Well, when you ban cards, sometimes you give those other cards a chance. There are cards that are on the fringe that we've all thought, right? Man, if this didn't get banished by Medusa, I actually might try this card. Man, if this card wasn't so weak to the early Storm Rage Onsing, I might actually try this card. Well, then if you ban some of those issue cards, you can give those other cards a chance to shine when they're not being held down by the oppressive cards so much. Briefly touching on limiting again, I already said I was in favor of it. I've heard this term referred to as restricting as well, but it's just the same thing. The idea that, hey, you can still run, instead of a full 4 copies of Sisu, the big 8-cost one, you can now only run 1 copy. So touched on this before, but just wanted to mention again, it can be very effective, especially in a game where searching isn't so heavy. And I have one final note that does particularly bug me about the Sapphire meta or the Control meta, and that is the issue of time. So at my locals, we have 50 minutes to play a best of 3 match, and that includes everything. That's the time it takes to shuffle up between rounds. And I can confirm this entire Arcasia's Island meta, nearly every match has been going to time. Unless someone is on aggro or they just 2-0 you with an absurd beatdown, the matches are going to time because all these blue decks take so long to play and have so many actions they do a turn that now the game is becoming even more tedious to play because every round is going to time, and we're always, all right, how do we settle this? Because we didn't draw, we had to draw at the end of the round, or someone die rolled, or whatever it was. And I've heard some complaints that it's just players who don't know how to control, use the deck. It's a lack of skill, and maybe there's some of that. But the people I play against, they've been playing these blue decks for 5, 6, 4 sets now. They know what they're doing. One of them is a national qualified player. He knows what he's doing, but when you can take 6 or 7 actions a turn, it's going to take some time, especially when you want to think about those and you don't just close your eyes and hope. And it's very frustrating for me that my turn is usually, okay, draw for turn, ink a card, play a single card, pass. So my turn took all of 30 seconds, and then I have to sit there and watch someone play solitaire. Surely that wasn't the intended Disney Lorcana experience, right? The point was to come together to take turns and play a trading card game based on the Disney IP. Surely it was not meant for me to have a very short, quick turn, and then I sit there and watch my opponents play with themselves for 10 minutes. Like, is that what we want? Is that really enjoyable? I certainly don't think so. And then having to be worried about time as well, and you want to just go, well, it's this person, so, it's not me. My turns take a minute at most. But this person is taking 5 minutes a turn. And again, it's not because they're slow playing, but when their Maurice's Workshop triggers for every single popsicle, oh my gosh, it's a pain in the butt. It's like, oh, I finally get to play. All right, here's my single card. So I think a pure control meta is very miserable to play against, and again, causes an issue with time. If we had DLCs, there would be matches going to time constantly, which also then slows the entire day and the entire tournament down. So those are my thoughts on a ban list and why I really do think it would be a positive thing for Disney Lorcana. I hope it's something they implement in the near future. Let me know what you think. If you fully agree, give me all the reasons why, yes, you think I nailed it, or maybe some of the reasons I forgot. And if you hate it and you're like, no, I'm fully against bans, feel free to voice that too. I would love to hear your reasons for it. If you enjoyed this video, please give a like and subscribe to the channel, or if you just hate it because I, wanted bans and you don't, feel free to smash that dislike too. That's fine. We are closing in on 2,000 subs, and your help can get us there. So check out the description of the video for our links to our Medify page, where I offer private coaching, and consider becoming a patron or YouTube member for exclusive bonuses. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.